Does firing agents for working on the cases that they were assigned to and that the president didn't like, is that politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
The FBI doesn't terminate anyone based on case assignments alone.
What made this exchange hit so hard was not just the anger, it was the structure of the case Deborah Ross laid out in real time. She did not accuse Kash Patel in abstract terms. She used his own confirmation promises as the measuring stick, then compared those promises to specific allegations involving FBI personnel decisions, political vetting, and retaliation tied to Trump-related investigations. In other words, this was not a clash over tone. It was a clash over whether the FBI's internal chain of command had been bent around political loyalty.
I'm going a little out of order here because I'm going to pursue some of the things that you were just talking to Mr. Fry about and remind you about your confirmation hearing. At your confirmation hearing in January, you said under oath, and I quote, "There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by the FBI should I be confirmed." And in your written response to the Senate questionnaire, you said, I quote, "Personnel decisions shall be based on performance and adherence to the law. And every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments." So I want to just go through a couple scenarios with you to get a sense of whether you think these are examples of politicization of the FBI or making decisions based on the performance and adherence to the law. So, first question. Would hiring FBI agents, analysts, and supervisors from only one political party being politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
We don't ask FBI people, applicants, where their political parties are.
Mr. Patel, do you ask FBI applicants who they voted for?
The FBI does not.
Are you aware that in the lawsuit that Mr. Driscoll filed against you and the FBI, he was asked who he voted for?
Since that lawsuit has been filed and it's ongoing litigation, I'm not able to comment.
Well, but it also means that you just said that what happened in his situation didn't happen. So we will go on to the next question. Let me ask you an even easier one. Does firing agents for working on the cases that they were assigned to and that the president didn't like, is that politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
The FBI doesn't terminate anyone based on case assignments alone.
Ross's tactic was devastating because she narrowed the argument to a yes or no standard. If the FBI asks about voting history, is that politicization? If agents are punished for working cases a president dislikes, is that politicization? Patel tried to answer in institutional language, saying the FBI does not ask applicants who they voted for and does not fire people over case assignments alone. But Ross was not talking theory. She was pointing to conduct alleged in litigation and using the hearing itself to say, these are not hypotheticals anymore.
Has the FBI ever been sued by somebody who felt that they were terminated based on case assignments?
In the entire history of the FBI, I'm sure they have.
No, since your tenure.
I'm sure there's ongoing litigation.
Yes. In fact, there is ongoing litigation. And in fact, people have been asked who they voted for. And in fact, you are running an FBI for the President of the United States rather than the people of the United States, because my questions were not hypotheticals. They are the things you have done during your tenure. And according to a lawsuit filed last week by long-term FBI agents, you fired former acting director Brian Driscoll. He had served with the Bureau for nearly 20 years, earned a Medal of Honor, Medal of Valor for bravery during the dangerous ISIS raid and had a wealth of crisis response experience and led the FBI's critical incident response group. When the Trump administrations interviewed Mr. Driscoll for that role, they interrogated him about his political leanings and who he voted for in the last 5 elections. Questions Mr. Driscoll refused to answer because those types of questions impermissibly politicized the FBI. You also fired Steve Jensen, who served the FBI for nearly 2 decades and ran critical terrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime operations, whom you once described as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI. But he was fired because he took part in investigating crimes committed on January 6th. And Trump's MAGA base lambasted you online for keeping him at the FBI. So he's no longer at the FBI. You also fired a decorated combat veteran with decades of experience in the Bureau, Special Agent Walter Jardia, because he worked on the investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and helped investigate Trump's ally, Peter Navarro. Director Patel, it is very clear that you have flunked your own test. You've put saving your job, which I actually believe you were being honest about during your confirmation hearings, over doing what's right for the FBI and the American people. That is not adherence to the law. Thank you, and I yield back.
Time of the gentleladies.
And then Ross escalates. She does not stop at Driscoll. She names officials she says were removed after careers built on national security, terrorism, crisis response, and major investigations. The effect is deliberate, to paint a pattern, not an isolated dispute. In her telling, this was not a personnel cleanup. It was a warning shot through the Bureau, a message that involvement in politically sensitive investigations could become a liability inside an institution that is supposed to be insulated from exactly that kind of pressure. NBC News identified Driscoll, Stephen Jensen, and Spencer Evans as plaintiffs in the lawsuit, and separately reported that Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino allegedly ordered Jensen to fire a specific agent, Walt Giardina, who had worked on the Jack Smith and Robert Mueller special counsel probes of Trump. PBS NewsHour's report says Jensen, despite being chosen by Patel to run the Washington field office, was told leadership was spending a lot of political capital to keep him in position. It also reports that Giardina was among the agents fired after having worked on Trump-related cases. Those details closely track Ross's basic allegation that officials tied to politically explosive investigations were being pushed out. That final line, "You flunked your own test," is what makes this confrontation memorable television, but also effective political storytelling. Ross framed Patel as a witness trapped by his own standard, not by an opposition standard, not by a cable news talking point, by his own words. And if viewers come away believing that agents were scrutinized for voting history, judged for Trump-related casework, or removed because the White House wanted symbolic scalps, then Ross succeeded in turning a routine oversight hearing into a credibility trial. For the audience, this is the key distinction. Ross's exchange was political theater, but it was anchored to a paper trail, a hearing clip, a confirmation transcript, news reporting from major outlets, and a lawsuit filed in federal court. Whether every allegation is ultimately proven is a separate legal question. But as a documentary-style news video, the core point is solid. Ross's attack was built around documented claims that directly challenge Patel's public commitments about politicization and retaliation. Deborah Ross did not need to prove every allegation in that hearing room. She only needed to show that Kash Patel's clean, confident promises about an apolitical FBI now live beside serious allegations that the Bureau was shaped by political pressure, loyalty screening, and retaliation tied to Trump investigations. That is why the moment landed. It was not just a partisan clash, it was a confrontation between public oath and reported conduct. And in that confrontation, Ross's central message was simple. If the FBI begins to look like an instrument for protecting a president instead of serving the public, then the damage is not only political, it is institutional. And once that credibility cracks, every future investigation carries the shadow of doubt.